The dust didn't blow, it crawled, slow and mean like a warning. It clung to the hem of Clara Holt's dress and painted her lashes the color of ash. Her boots, once white for a wedding that never brought laughter, sank into the dry clay. Of the auction yard. No one looked at her. They looked past her. Men milled like wolves with knives tucked in their belts and tobacco drying at the edges of their grins. They pointed at the strong-backed widows, the fertile ones, the loud-breathing girls with hips made for sons. The men spoke in low voices, patted their pockets, counted coins. Clara stood in the shadow of the stable wall, alone. Again, the auctioneer's voice cracked. Final bid on the widow Maria Lynn. $30 and 2 hens. Laughter rose, but Clara didn't laugh. Her fingers clutched the fraying ribbon on her wrist, a habit she couldn't kill. The ribbon was from a child's gown she'd sewn once, years ago, for a boy who'd only lived 2 days. Her body, they'd whispered, wasn't made for keeping things alive? She still heard the doctor's voice when she closed her eyes. Greater than some wombs are just barren ground, Miss Holt. The bell rang again. All right, next woman. Pause. The auctioneer looked down at the list. Clara Holt, another pause. Age 29, white, no known kin. Farmer's widow, no surviving children. His tone soured with that last line. The crowd quieted. Clara stepped forward. She had nothing to offer but silence and straight posture. The sun hit the white streak in her hair and the smudge on her cheek. She didn't flinch. She didn't smile. The auctioneer waited. No hands rose, not one, after 10 seconds. He cleared his throat and waved her off. She's done, move along. And like that she was invisible. By sundown, the last wagon had rolled out. The town marshal gave her a ragged canvas sack and pointed west. Walk or starve? You ain't got no business staying here. So she walked. The desert didn't care for stories. Or for broken women. Clara walked until the boots wore holes in her heels and the last crust of bread turned to dust in her pocket. The wind changed direction and brought the howl of something low to the earth. Coyotes, maybe. Or men pretending to be. She kept walking. The stars came out in streaks of silver, and with them came a deep cold. She found a patch of dying sage and sat, knees hugged to her chest, watching the horizon. A rattlesnake coiled near her foot, but didn't strike. Even the snake knew she wasn't worth the trouble. When her eyes closed, she saw the cradle again, empty, always empty, somewhere before dawn. The wind shifted again, hoofbeats, Clara. Blinked. They came slow, steady, the sound of weight and rhythm moving through dust. She reached for the small knife in her boot, just a sewing blade, barely sharp. She saw the outline first. A horse. A massive one, and a rider tall in the saddle. Behind him, like ghosts bound to his back, 6 small shapes, children. He didn't speak, neither did she. The fire between them was already dying, just coals and smoke. He dismounted with a fluid grace, like the land bent beneath him. His eyes were black, unreadable. A long braid fell over one shoulder. Comanche, she tensed. He saw her, and saw through her. Then, without a word, he tossed a pouch near the fire. Jerky, water, dried corn. She didn't touch it. Not yet. One by one, the children slid off the horse, quiet as leaves. The smallest, no older than 4, stared at her with eyes too big for her face. The oldest boy, maybe 11, knelt and stirred the coals to life again. None of them spoke. Only the wind filled the silence, and the pop of the rekindled flame. Then he looked at her once more. Not with pity, not with desire, but something deeper, recognition, like he'd been searching for something lost. And found it. They didn't ask her name that night. She didn't ask theirs. The 7 of them curled under blankets. The warmth passed between limbs like quiet mercy. Clara didn't sleep much. Her hands trembled from hunger, but not just the kind food could cure. She stared into the sky and whispered one question she'd never dared speak aloud. Is there a place for me anywhere? Any more? The fire cracked. A child shifted. The stranger's silhouette didn't move, still as a rock. Still as time, the next morning. She expected them to leave, but they didn't. Tahana the children called him that once. Softly cut meat near the fire and passed her a small tin cup of broth. She took it without a word. She tried to hand back the food pouch. He shook his head. They walked together toward the pass. Her legs ached, but she followed. At the creek, the children laughed for the first time. One girl offered Clara a pebble, shaped like a heart. She didn't speak, just pressed it into Clara's palm and ran back toward the water. Later, when the wind picked up and the sky turned that angry yellow, Tahana scanned the distance. Storm coming, they moved fast. Up into a grove of cedars, toward a rock shelter blackened by old fire. The kind of place that had sheltered generations. Clara helped gather sticks. Tahana watched her hands. They were small, calloused, worn, but steady, that night, as rain slammed the world into silence. Clara sat near the boy with a cough. She pressed a damp cloth to his forehead, hummed a tune. Something from before. The children leaned toward her. One curled beside her hip, another reached for her sleeve, and Tahana, he didn't stop them. When the storm passed, the land breathed again. Clara awoke to sunlight, the smell of wet soil, and the warmth of a small hand in hers. The youngest girl, she wasn't afraid. Clara blinked hard, heart caught in her throat. That tiny hand. It fit just right. They reached a wide stretch of prairie where wild horses ran. The grass here grew tall, golden, and sharp. Clara walked behind them, still unsure if she belonged or was just a ghost walking with the living. Then she saw it, across, weather-worn, beneath it, an old toy wagon. Sun-bleached fabric tied to it. The grave was unmarked. Tahana dismounted, removed his hat, and knelt. The children followed suit. Clara stood back, but he looked up. And nodded. Just once, inviting her forward. She stepped slow. Each step a memory. Each breath a scar. When she stood beside the grave, she didn't cry. Her tears had dried years ago. Instead she whispered, "Greater than I lost one too." Tahana looked at her then. Truly looked. His voice was deep when it finally came. Greater than, so did I. That was all, but it was enough. The silence between them wasn't empty anymore. It was full, heavy, shared. That night, under stars thick enough to touch, Clara took the ribbon from her wrist. She tied it to a tree limb near the fire. The children watched. Then the youngest came forward and tied her own a small string of red yarn from her braid. No words, just understanding, just memory. As the flames whispered low and the horses dozed nearby, Clara finally slept. Not with fear, not with longing, but with something like belonging, and for the first time in years, the wind didn't sound like grief, it sounded like a beginning. The prairie stretched like a giant breath held too long. Every step left a mark in the wet soil from the last storm. The horses trudged forward, ears twitching, eyes wary. In the distance, hawks circled like omens. Clara walked behind them, a quiet figure, half shadow, half ghost, but somehow still there. Still breathing. The children had accepted her before she'd accepted herself. The way they handed her apples, or brushed her skirt as they passed, or leaned into her shoulder. When the wind picked up, none of it was spoken. But it was trust. And Tahana. He said even less than before. He watched. Not like a man trying to own something, but like someone who understood how fragile a soul could be once broken. And that maybe, just maybe, it didn't need fixing, only company. They moved westward through scrub valleys and thorny hills. A river marked their path. Every few miles, Tahana would stop, crouch, and press his palm to the earth. The children mimicked him. Clara didn't ask what he heard. She just watched. By midday, the youngest boy, the one with the wild curls and a cough that wouldn't quit, started to fall behind. Clara caught him once, then twice. The third time she lifted him into her arms. He weighed nearly nothing. His head lolled against her collarbone. At the next creek bed, Tahana reached into his pouch and pulled out a tin of powdered willow bark. Clara mixed it into water and trickled it down the boy's throat. He didn't flinch. His skin burned. That night she didn't sleep. She sat cross-legged with the child cradled in her lap, humming the same lullaby her mother used to sing before everything went wrong. Tahana didn't stop her. He just sat across the fire with his eyes closed, lips moving soundlessly to a prayer older than the land itself. On the fourth day, they reached the edge of a ranch valley, fences like scars cutting through what used to be wild. Smoke rose in the distance, a white farmhouse, a barn. Two figures on horseback approached. Clara moved to the children instinctively, pulling them close behind her. The riders slowed. "Comanche?" one muttered. "And what's that with M? A widow?" They dismounted, spitting tobacco as they walked closer, guns on their hips. "One SQUINTED. She's the one from the widow auction, the barren one." The other grinned. "No threat then, just a pair of orphans watching orphans." Tahana said nothing. He didn't reach for a weapon. He didn't blink. But Clara stepped forward. Not to fight, but to block. She stood in front of the children like a thin post in a storm. Her hands didn't shake. Her voice didn't rise. "We'll pass through. We don't need trouble." The man with the rifle stepped closer. "You already brought it. This land ain't for savages or broken wives." He spit near her boot. Tahana finally moved. Just a step. Just a breath. But it changed the wind. The men backed off, not because he said anything, but because something in him was carved from stone. Something that didn't bluff. "You got till sundown," one called as they mounted again. "Then we'll be ridden this stretch with fire." They rode off, and the prairie held its breath. They didn't wait for sundown. They moved. Fast, silent, through gullies and brush, deeper into the land no man wanted. That night the sky turned orange to the east, the ranchers burning trails to scare them off. The oldest child, a boy with eyes too old for his age, asked, "Are we going to keep running?" Clara looked at him. "No," she said. "We're going to keep walking." And they did. The fever broke. The boy's cheeks flushed pink again. He laughed when a rabbit darted underfoot, and Clara let out the breath she'd been holding. For days, at a resting point, they came upon a grove of willow trees and a dry well. Nearby, something caught Clara's eye, the remains of an old cabin. Nothing left but a stone hearth and a few splinters. She walked inside, past what had once been walls, and knelt near the fireplace. There, wedged between two stones, something. Folded, she pulled it loose, a letter. Faded and water-warped, sealed with wax nearly gone. She opened it with trembling fingers. The ink was smudged, but one line remained legible. Greater than, "To the child I never met. I'm sorry I wasn't strong enough to stay." Her throat closed. Her vision blurred. Tahana stepped inside the ruins, quiet as breath. He didn't ask what it said. He just knelt beside her, resting one hand on the stone. "I buried my wife," he said softly, "right near a well like this." It was the first personal thing he'd shared. "She died with our seventh still inside." Clara didn't speak. Instead, she pressed the letter against the stone. Let it rest there. Two ghosts saying goodbye in silence. They made camp near the canyon ridge. The stars came back in full force, glittering like broken glass across the sky. Coyotes howled, but the fire kept them at bay. Clara sat with the children, braiding the eldest girl's hair. Each loop, each twist, was a prayer. Not for herself, but for the girl's future, for the mother she might be or not be, but still be whole. The youngest curled in her lap again, and then a sound, something behind the rocks. A breath, a whisper. A boot on stone. Tahana rose in one smooth motion. Hand at his knife. Clara froze. A figure stepped out, thin, sharp-faced, with a shotgun resting casual in one hand. Clara knew him before her mind caught up. Her husband, Jonas Holt. His eyes. slid over the children, over Tahana, then landed on her like rusted nails. Well, he said, ain't this a picture? The fire popped. Tahana stood still. Clara slowly stood, shielding the children. Jonas smirked. Didn't think you'd crawl this far west? Clara, figured you'd rot outside the saloon back east. Guess the savages took pity. Tahana didn't flinch. Jonas looked him over. You the one that stole my woman? Clara stepped forward, voice quiet but deadly. I was never yours. Jonas' face twisted. You ran from me. You left me, she whispered. He laughed once. I left a grave. That's all you ever gave me. Emptiness. Then his voice dropped. I heard about your little ride. About this redskin and his brats. There's a bounty, real money for turning them in. Clara's breath caught. Jonas glanced at Tahana. Turn him in, Clara. Give me the kids. I'll say you helped me. You can come back. We can start again. She looked at him, then back at the children. At Tahana. Then at her own hands, once empty. Now full. She shook her head. No. She said, You'd really throw away a second chance for a pack of mutts and a man who don't even speak? She stepped forward. This is my second chance. Jonas raised the shotgun. Tahana. Moved, faster than breath. The two men clashed, steel against barrel, firelight flashing off blades. The children screamed. Clara pulled them behind her, grabbing the oldest and pushing the others back. Tahana disarmed Jonas in a single breath. Knocked. The shotgun wide and drew blood from his arm. Jonas stumbled. You'll regret this. He spat. Clara stepped forward. For the first time in her life, she picked up a weapon, the fallen shotgun, and aimed it, heart pounding so hard she could barely see. Jonas looked at her. Eyes wild. You ain't gonna shoot me, he said. You're weak. You always were. Clara didn't tremble, but she didn't pull the trigger either. She lowered the gun. Then, softly said, Go before I change my mind. Jonas looked between her and Tahana, then spat blood, turned, and vanished into the dark. The moment passed. But something inside Clara had changed. Something had been claimed. The wind picked up again. In the silence that followed Tahana. Knelt, hands bloody, breathing heavy. Clara went to him. She didn't speak. She just touched his shoulder, gently. He looked up at her, and for the first time, he smiled, just barely, but it was enough. They moved camp the next day, deeper into the canyon, where the wildflowers still bloomed and no one dared follow. The children picked colors, tied them into Clara's skirt. Tahana built a new shelter from old stone. Clara found herbs in the hills and boiled them into medicines. No one asked what came next, but they all knew, because in the silence between firelight and dawn, something unspoken had bloomed. Not romance. Not yet. Something. Older, recognition, belonging, a kind of love deeper than words. Dawn bled over the ridge like someone had slit the sky. The sun came slow, but with heat, a dry, pressing kind that warned of dust storms and decisions no one wanted to make. Clara stood by the fire pit, grinding corn with a smooth stone. The children were still asleep, curled in their blankets like fledglings. Tahana sat a short distance away, sharpening a blade. Not for hunting. For protection, because something had shifted, not in the air. Not in the weather, in fate. They saw smoke that afternoon, not cooking fire. Not brush burn, signal smoke. Tahana's face didn't change, but the blade in his hand stopped moving. He tilted his head toward the southern rim of the canyon. Bounty riders, Clara said quietly. Tahana nodded once. She felt it in her spine, a low ripple like the earth bracing itself. Jonas hadn't ridden away out of mercy. He'd gone. To fetch worse men. The kind paid to hunt people like Tahana. The kind who didn't care about children. The kind who'd sell silence for silver. The children gathered around them, wide-eyed and quiet. They'd seen fire before. They'd heard screams before. They didn't ask what was coming. They already knew. Clara helped pack quickly. No wasted words. She pulled the youngest onto her hip and tied her scarf around the girl's small back. Tahana gave her his canteen. The oldest boy carried the map. They moved, not down the canyon, but up, into the cliffs. The path wasn't clear. It never had been, but Tahana knew every crevice, every bend. He'd led men into war before. He could lead them out now. By dusk, the riders came, 5 of them. Coats dusted with the bones of 100 trails. Jonas rode at the center, bandaged, but grinning like a devil who thought he'd already won. They stopped where the camp had been. Found the fire cold. Found the stones reset. Jonas spit. "She's still with him," he muttered. "Stupid woman thinks she can start over with a broken savage and some orphan brats." One rider dismounted and knelt in the ash. He sniffed. "Touch the dirt. They're headed to the high pass," he said. "There's only one way out." Jonas smiled. "Good, let's cut 'em off." Night fell like a knife. Wind screamed through the cracks. Clara and the children huddled beneath an overhang while Tahana stood guard. His silhouette didn't move. The stars reflected off the blade at his hip. Clara walked to him, stood beside him. She didn't ask for comfort. She didn't offer it. They just breathed the same air, felt the same dread crawling down their spines. "I can't let them take the children," she said. "They won't," he replied. "Even if they take me to get to them?" He turned his face slightly, just enough that the moon caught his eyes. "You're not theirs to take." At first light, they reached the ridgeline. Below it lay the crossing, an old Comanche trail over the stone bridge, crumbling but passable. If they crossed, they'd reach the old hunting basin. Safe, hidden, but the riders had guessed the same. Jonas stood across the ravine, shotgun gleaming. 4 men beside him, rifles cocked. Tahana signaled for the children to stay. "Back." Clara stood beside him. "Go," he said to her. "I'll hold them." But she didn't move. She pulled the small revolver from her belt, the one she'd cleaned every night but never fired. "I'm not walking away again," she whispered. Tahana nodded once. That was all. The shootout wasn't long, but it was brutal. Jonas shouted first, something cruel, something meant to shame, but Clara didn't listen. Her ears rang with blood and memory. Tahana moved like water, quick, sharp, precise. His blade flew, found bone. His fists cracked ribs. He fought like someone who had everything to lose. And Clara, her first shot missed. The second struck the man aiming for Tahana's back. He fell. Her third, Jonas. The bullet grazed his arm. He turned, eyes wild. "You'd shoot me? For them?" "For me," she said. "For who I finally am." The youngest girl screamed. A rider had broken from the chaos, had grabbed her, dragged her back across the stone. Clara saw. Her small arms flailing, eyes wide with terror. Without thinking, without hesitation, Clara ran across the bridge. Toward the man. Toward the danger. She tackled him, hard, scraped her knees. Bit down on pain. He hit her. She didn't stop. She slammed a rock into his skull until he fell. The girl sobbed into her chest. Clara held her, rocking even as blood trickled down her temple. Behind her. The fight ended. The last rider fled. Jonas was gone. Tahana stood, breath ragged, knife dripping. The canyon went still. They didn't speak as they buried the bodies. Tahana carved symbols into the stone, not names, but stories. A way to honor death without repeating it. Clara knelt by a flat rock and placed the ribbon from her wrist across it. Faded. Nearly gone, but still whole. The wind picked up. The children gathered wildflowers. They laid them down one by one. 3. Days later they reached the basin. It wasn't paradise, but it was far and clean. A spring bubbled through the moss. Old hunting shelters could be restored. They unpacked, built. Clara planted herbs. Tahana caught fish. The children learned to laugh again. And one evening, as the sun fell behind the hills, Clara stood watching the youngest draw figures in the dirt with a stick. Tahana walked up beside her. She looked at him. No fear. No shame, no emptiness, just quiet strength. "She called me Mama today," Clara said. He didn't answer right away. Then, She sees what you are, asterisk. So do you? Asterisk, I saw it the day I found you in the smoke. Asterisk, Clara smiled. It wasn't a big smile, but it was real, and it stayed. That night they sat by the fire, Tahana on one side, Clara on the other. The children between them, laughing over a story told in two languages. Asterisk, no one called it family. But it was, not because blood said. So, because scars did, because choices did, asterisk, because somewhere in a burned-out canyon a woman once cast aside, picked up a child and fought for her? Not to prove her worth, but because she finally knew it. Epilogue. Weeks later at the edge of the basin, Clara hammered a wooden sign into the ground. She'd carved the letters herself. Safe pass. Asterisk, no. Explanation. No need, just a place where the cast-offs could come and begin again. Asterisk,